Everything a person sees, touches, and experiences in the external world is nothing but the reflection of a deeper, invisible reality. There is an underlying order, a law as certain as that of gravity, which governs the transition from idea to form. This law is that of the creative mind. Most people, however, live as if events are the result of luck, fate, or mysterious forces beyond their control, when, in truth, every circumstance is the direct outcome of an invisible pattern of thought that, consciously or unconsciously, has been sustained. It's like a mathematical equation. If we input certain numbers, the result will inevitably correspond. There is no favoritism, chance, or injustice. The same applies to the mind. What is firmly and constantly imprinted within it expresses itself in the visible. Understanding this means adopting a new stance towards life. It is realizing that we are not at the mercy of external conditions, but that these conditions are shaped from within. The soil never argues with the seed it receives. If it's wheat, it will yield wheat. If it's tares, it will yield tares. The subconscious of the human mind is this fertile soil, always ready to give form to what is planted in it. The problem is that most people plant seeds of doubt, fear, and disorder, and then are surprised when they harvest equivalent results. But the person who learns to think clearly, to visualize precisely, and to disciplinedly maintain an ordered inner image, will sooner or later see that image crystallize in the external world, because the law cannot be denied. Creative visualization, therefore, is not a mystical artifice, but the conscious application of this universal law. It is the deliberate act of choosing the invisible causes that will inevitably produce visible effects. When understood, this practice becomes as rational as drawing a blueprint before erecting a building. It would be unthinkable to begin constructing a house without first having the architectural plan. Yet, this is exactly what many do with their lives. They desire a different reality, but neither formulate nor sustain the corresponding image in their minds. The result is a confused, unstable edifice, often contrary to their aspirations. But when the mind is used as it should be, it becomes the invisible matrix of all achievement, and the creative process is brought under conscious control. The introduction to this understanding is simple, but it demands seriousness. Everything begins in the invisible, and the invisible is governed by thought. There is no exception to this law. Therefore, the fundamental question each person should ask themselves is not, "What is happening to me?" but rather, "What have I been holding in my mind?" For, sooner or later, that answer will find expression in the world. The first principle is to understand, clearly and unshakably, that the mind operates according to fixed laws, and that these laws are as impersonal and exact as the laws of physics. Gravity does not change because someone is virtuous or because another is a sinner. It simply responds without distinction to any moving body. Similarly, the mental law responds equally to any thought pattern imprinted within it. There is no favoritism, no exceptions, no grace periods. Everything firmly imprinted with conviction in the invisible will find expression in the visible. That is why we cannot attribute our results to luck or ill fortune. For, in truth, we harvest exactly what we plant in the mental soil, even if we are unaware of how we sow. Imagine a fertile field, always ready to receive any seed sown. The soil does not argue, does not refuse, does not select. It merely obeys. If a thorn bush seed is placed in it, the result will be a bush full of thorns. If a wheat seed is planted, in due time the harvest will be abundant. This is how the subconscious mind works. It silently receives the impressions from the conscious mind and works incessantly to give them form, without asking whether they suit us or not. The subconscious has no sense of humor, no moral judgment. It merely produces in correspondence with what it receives. Therefore, if someone constantly insists on thinking about failure, fear, scarcity, or illness, this persistence becomes an order, and the law, true to itself, constructs such conditions in the external world. This truth, when understood, grants the individual both power and responsibility. Many do not realize that the habit of repeating disordered thoughts, of surrendering to images of fear, or feeding negative beliefs is precisely what keeps such conditions active in their lives. The law cannot be stopped. It is neutral, exact, and tireless. It is up to each person to learn to discipline their mind so as not to allow unwanted impressions to fix themselves in the invisible. It is here that the importance of mental vigilance becomes evident, for every persistent thought is a potential seed. Consider the example of someone who, throughout their life, nurtures the belief that money is hard to earn, or that they will never have full health. Even if this person desires prosperity and vitality, their ingrained belief is the real order etched into the subconscious, and it is that which manifests. The law does not fail to correspond. On the other hand, when someone replaces such beliefs with a clear conviction of abundance, repeated and firmly sustained, the same principle begins to operate in their favor, bringing the opportunities, circumstances, and resources needed to confirm externally what was already established internally. This principle also reveals that it is not enough to merely wish vaguely. Fleeting desires or occasional thoughts do not possess enough strength to create a consistent matrix in the invisible. The law responds to what is firm, clear, and reiterated. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The impact generates waves, but soon the surface returns to normal. Constant repetition, however, is like a continuous flow of water that, little by little, carves a deep channel through which every current must pass. Such is disciplined thought. It creates a stable structure that external reality is compelled to reflect. Therefore, the first step to manifesting any result is to accept, without reservation, that the law of the mind is exact and immutable. If something undesirable appears in your life, it is not an accident, but the reflection of internal patterns, conscious or unconscious, that were sustained until they took form. This may seem harsh, but it is, in fact, liberating, because if the cause lies within us, the power to alter the effect also lies within. To recognize the neutrality of the law is to recognize that we are not victims, but active participants in the creative process. Whoever understands this fundamental principle no longer looks outward for culprits or explanations, but turns inward, aware that by changing the mental seed, they will inevitably change the harvest. This certainty is the foundation of all creative work and the first step toward assuming conscious mastery of life. The second principle is the understanding of the inseparable unity between thought and form. Just as there is no construction without a design, there is no manifestation without a preceding idea. The architect never begins a project by erecting walls at random. They first conceive a plan, detailing every measurement, every line, every proportion. This plan, though invisible to the ordinary eye, is the most real element of the entire construction, because it contains within itself the order that will guide the worker's efforts. Similarly, thought is the plan, and external reality is merely the construction site where that plan is erected. The error of most lies in believing that external conditions arise spontaneously, without realizing that every detail of them has already been prepared by the mind that conceived them, consciously or unconsciously. The conscious mind plays the role of the architect. It selects, imagines, visualizes, and gives form to ideas. The subconscious, in turn, is the faithful builder, who never argues, never alters plans, never improvises. It merely obeys what is consistently transmitted to it. If the plan is clear, repeated, and precise, the work will be solid. If the plan is confused, full of contradictions, the result will be unstable and chaotic. That is why so many people live in constant contradiction. They say they want abundance but maintain thoughts of scarcity. They desire health but feed images of illness. They dream of harmony but harbor resentments. And so they offer the subconscious conflicting plans, which it, faithful to its role, executes exactly as received, producing a life marked by contradictions. To make this principle clearer, imagine someone who ardently desires a new endeavor. For a few moments each day, they visualize success, feel confident, see themselves prospering. But then they spend hours nurturing doubts, fears, and images of failure. What is imprinted on the subconscious is not the brief flash of optimism, but the sum of all sustained impressions. Thus, although the person believes they are asking for success, the dominant plan is one of insecurity, and this will be the result that materializes in practical life. The subconscious does not judge, does not choose the best, does not correct. It constructs exactly what is given to it, like a worker faithfully following a drawing, no matter how poorly it is made. This principle leads us to understand the importance of formulating clear and unequivocal mental plans. It is not enough to desire vaguely or to alternate opposing images. It is necessary to fixate on a defined vision, as detailed as an architectural blueprint, and transmit it to the subconscious through repetition and disciplined imagination. Just as a construction does not change its form every day, but follows the same plan until completion, the mind also requires persistence and coherence to give form to what is desired. It is important to understand that thought and form are not two separate processes, but two poles of the same phenomenon. The invisible is merely form in a latent state. The visible is that same form in a manifested state. The tree was already in the seed. The building was already in the design. Reality was already in the thought. Once we accept this unity, we understand that we cannot toy with mental images as if they were fantasies without consequence. Every sustained thought is an instruction to the invisible builder. Every clear and repeated image is a brick laid in the work that will soon rise before us. This principle is liberating because it shows that power does not lie in external circumstances, but in the clarity of internal plans. What today seems like an insurmountable limit is nothing more than the construction of confused or negative plans. But when the conscious mind assumes its role as architect with discipline, when it draws with precision and transmits only the desired image to the subconscious, the work rises, silently and infallibly, reflecting in the external world the exactness of the mental plan. The third principle is the continuity of thought, the disciplined persistence in sustaining the same image until it becomes tangible reality. A loose idea, fed only for sporadic moments, lacks the strength to fix itself in the invisible. It's like throwing a stone into a lake. The impact produces ripples for a brief moment, but soon the surface returns to its natural calm. The mind functions in the same way. A fleeting thought, however intense, does not create sufficient roots to shape the external world. It is constant repetition, the daily habit of visualizing and feeling the same reality, that carves a deep channel in the subconscious, through which creative energy flows in an orderly and inevitable manner. Continuity is what distinguishes vague desire from true conscious creation. Many people dream of transformations but incessantly alternate between images of success and failure, between confidence and doubt, between enthusiasm and fear. This oscillation does not create a stable current, but rather a fragmented field, resulting in equally fragmented circumstances. For something to be built, the mind needs to maintain a constancy of vision, like a river that, through its uninterrupted flow, carves a path even through the hardest rocks. Disciplined repetition, far from being mere effort, is what transforms the invisible into the inevitable. We can observe this principle in the simple things of life. A musician does not become a master by playing their instrument only occasionally, but by daily practice that shapes their skill. A child does not learn to speak by repeating a word just once, but by the continuous act of hearing and repeating sounds until they become fixed. Similarly, the mind does not become imbued with a new idea through occasional visualization, but through the steadfastness of returning to it every day, until that image becomes so familiar and natural that the subconscious accepts it as an accomplished fact. It is at this point that many fail. They desire a new reality, do some imagination exercises, feel initial enthusiasm, but soon abandon the practice when they do not perceive immediate changes. They forget that just as a tree does not grow on the same day the seed was planted, external results also require a period of gestation. The invisible field needs to be nourished with continuity until the effect manifests. The waiting period is not a sign of failure, but a sign that the law is silently at work, gathering the necessary conditions for the emergence of form. Continuity, therefore, is an act of trust in the law itself. It is the certainty that each repetition reinforces the invisible matrix, making it increasingly stable and irresistible to external forces. Even when nothing seems to change, every disciplined thought is a brick placed in the internal construction. When the edifice is complete, no circumstance will be able to prevent its appearance in the world. That is why persistence should not be seen as tiresome effort, but as the natural flow of the conscious creator who knows that reality inevitably bends to what is firmly sustained. Recognizing this principle is to free oneself from the anxiety for immediate results. The creator's task is not to rush time, but to maintain a stable mental pattern until the effect appears. Thus, the continuity of thought becomes the key that separates fantasy from result, ephemeral desire from concrete manifestation. Sustaining the image until the end is to ensure that it will become visible, because the law knows no failure when the mind remains true to its purpose. The fourth principle is the inevitable correspondence between cause and effect, a law that admits neither exceptions nor mistakes. Everything that manifests in the external world was already, in latent form, contained in the thought that preceded it. Just as grapes are not gathered from thorn bushes, neither can joy be expected when images of sadness are constantly cultivated, nor prosperity when the mind is dominated by the belief in scarcity. Every thought is a seed cast into the invisible field of the mind, and every seed carries within itself, infallibly, the fruit it will produce. This law cannot be evaded or indefinitely postponed. Sooner or later, every mental cause will find its reflection on the visible plane. It is common for people to attribute their misfortunes to external factors, to circumstances, to destiny, to bad luck, but this is merely a way of denying their own creative responsibility. The truth is that no effect can arise without a corresponding cause. What we today call bad luck is nothing more than the harvest of disordered thoughts, negative beliefs, and contrary images that have been nurtured over time. Similarly, what we call good luck is merely the natural harvest of positive ideas, firm convictions, and constructive images sustained in the mind. The law does not choose whom it favors. It merely responds faithfully to the established pattern. Consider the example of someone who, even while desiring a prosperous life, constantly repeats phrases like, "There's never enough money," or "Life is difficult." These statements are not mere harmless words. They are instructions that the subconscious receives as commands. The correspondence is inevitable. What is repeatedly established as an inner cause translates into an outer effect. This person, without realizing it, creates a cycle in which their beliefs produce scarcity, and scarcity further reinforces their beliefs until their entire life seems to be proof that the law is unjust, when in reality it is absolutely just and exact. On the other hand, someone who learns to cultivate thoughts of abundance, confidence, and harmony begins to cast new seeds into the invisible field. Even if the results are not immediate, the correspondence is assured. Just as a wheat seed does not sprout the instant it is planted, but requires a period of germination, so too thoughts need time to organize the external conditions that will correspond to the inner pattern. The delay between cause and effect should not be seen as a failure, but as a natural part of the creative process. This principle calls us to the discipline of monitoring our own thoughts. If we reap only what we sow, then it is up to us to carefully choose which seeds we cast into the mind. It is not enough to cultivate positive images for a few moments and then allow contrary thoughts to dominate the inner field. The law does not select only positive ideas. It responds to all causes without distinction. That is why mental self-control is so necessary. Every sustained thought is a silent command, and every silent command will become reality. When an individual fully comprehends the correspondence between cause and effect, they stop blaming the world and begin to assume total responsibility for their own life. This understanding is liberating because it restores to the individual the power to transform any circumstance, provided they are willing to change the inner cause. Thus, the mind reveals itself as the primary source of all that exists, and life as the faithful reflection of what has been imprinted upon it. Whoever accepts this truth understands that destiny is not something imposed from outside, but the natural consequence of the seeds they themselves chose to plant. The fifth principle is the conscious mastery of imagination, the deliberate use of this faculty as a creative instrument and not as an idle distraction. Many confuse imagination with purposeless fantasy, as if it were merely a resource for escaping reality. But in truth, imagination is the central power by which the invisible takes form. Everything we today consider concrete, buildings, inventions, institutions, even our personal experiences, first existed as a mental image sustained in someone's mind. What we call human progress is nothing more than imagination persistently applied until it materializes on the physical plane. The difference between someone who creates deliberately and someone who merely dreams lies in the degree of intention and discipline. The occasional dreamer entertains pleasant thoughts for a few moments, but soon abandons them in the face of external appearances. The conscious creator, on the other hand, maintains the image in their mind with firmness, even when external circumstances seem to contradict it. They understand that the visible is merely an effect, and that the true cause lies in their imagination. Therefore, they are not guided by what they see, but by what they have decided to see internally. Just as a sculptor looks at a block of marble and already envisions the finished statue, the disciplined mind uses imagination to see beyond the raw material of current conditions. This principle can be observed in the great inventions that changed the course of history. The airplane flew in the imagination of the Wright brothers long before it soared through the skies. Electricity illuminated Edison's mind long before it lit up entire cities. Every visible achievement was first a mental picture repeated, felt, and accepted as real, until the external world bent to correspond. Similarly, each individual carries in their imagination the possibility of creating new forms of life, new paths, and new experiences. The question is not whether imagination works, but how it is being used, with clarity and firmness or in a dispersed and contradictory manner. The power of imagination is not limited to humanity's great achievements, but applies practically to each person's life. Someone facing financial difficulties, for example, can continue reinforcing images of lack and debt, or can deliberately choose to imagine themselves in abundance, sustaining the feeling of supply until that image takes root in the subconscious. The same applies to health, relationships, and any aspect of life. Imagination is the invisible matrix where every new condition is born, and when used with discipline, it becomes the key to reordering any situation. Mastering imagination does not mean merely dreaming, but taking conscious control of what one allows oneself to think and visualize. It means refusing contrary images, not as one who flees from reality, but as one who understands that reality is only a reflection, and that by changing the cause, the effect will also change. This attitude requires courage, because it is easier to keep reacting to appearances than to insist on an inner vision contrary to what the eyes show. But it is precisely this exercise of faithfulness to the internal image that distinguishes the conscious creator from someone who lives at the mercy of events. This final principle synthesizes all the preceding ones. The law of the mind is exact. Thought and form are inseparable. Continuity creates deep roots, and cause and effect are inevitable. Imagination is the instrument through which all these elements unite in creative action. Whoever learns to govern it consciously understands that there is no chance or imposed destiny, but only the law responding to the sustained mental pattern. Thus, imagination ceases to be mere daydreaming and becomes the highest tool of creation, capable of silently transforming the life of anyone who uses it with purpose and discipline. Therefore, by bringing together all these principles, we arrive at a simple truth of unquestionable weight. A person is the creator of their own experience, because the mind is the invisible matrix of all form. There is no chance nor capricious forces deciding destinies. There is only an exact law, which responds unfailingly to the mental pattern each individual chooses to sustain. What we see before us today is nothing but the harvest of images, beliefs, and impressions that we allowed to fix themselves within. And what we will see tomorrow will be the result of the seeds we plant now. This is a universal law, as impartial as mathematics, as constant as the rising sun. In light of this, responsibility is inescapable. We can no longer rely on excuses or attribute to the external world what is ours to transform. If we want a different life, we must, first and foremost, think differently. Creative visualization is not an illusion to deceive the senses, but the mind's scientific method for shaping reality. Every disciplined thought is a silent command that the subconscious obeys. Every sustained image is a blueprint that sooner or later will be constructed in the visible. Therefore, I urge everyone to abandon, once and for all, the belief in unpredictable external forces and to take control of their own imagination. The law will not fail to respond. Sustain, with clarity and firmness, the vision of what you desire, and pay no attention to contrary appearances, for these are not causes but merely transient effects. Whoever governs their thoughts governs their life, and whoever learns to think creatively discovers that the universe is not an enemy, but a faithful ally of every idea that is maintained. From now on, assume the position of conscious creators. Do not expect circumstances to change by themselves, but command, with discipline and conviction, that they align with the chosen mental pattern. Remember, the invisible is the cause. The visible is merely the reflection. When the mind rises in clarity, reality, sooner or later, bends in obedience. This is the law, and it never fails.
Open your eyes, but not to the world around you. Open them inward, because what you see outside is not the truth. It is merely the echo of your inner vibration. Life is not a series of random events, nor a roulette wheel governed by luck or fate. It is a response, perfect, precise, and impersonal, to what you silently uphold within yourself. Every emotion, every thought, every sensation is a frequency sent to the invisible field that shapes reality. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are their invisible author. Everything that happens to you begins before the event. It begins in the invisible. In that instant, when you choose to believe something, feel something, or fear something, and the world merely obeys. When you understand this, you stop begging for change and begin to command with your vibration. But vibrating correctly is not about repeating phrases or forcing joy. It is a state. It is the art of aligning your energy with the certainty of what already is, even if your eyes still tell you otherwise. Those who master this art don't need to chase anything. Everything comes to them. Because vibration is the magnet that moves the universe. What you think is language, what you feel is a command. Life doesn't respond to what you want, but to what you are at your core. Therefore, while the world seeks external strategies, those who have awakened turn inward, knowing that the secret lies not in doing, but in being. So, if you're tired of fighting against the same invisible walls, if you realize that effort doesn't change the essential, it's time to understand the principle that transforms the invisible into form. Vibrating correctly is the supreme power of one who remembers they are a creator. And so that you may learn to use it consciously, I will reveal 5 simple yet sacred steps, the path to align your vibration with what you desire and make reality itself work in your favor. Before any word, before any image, there is silence. And it is in this silence that power resides. Vibrating correctly begins by returning to the center, to the point where nothing needs to happen for everything to be possible. This is the I am, the foundation of all creation. When you connect with it, the world loses its power to control you, because you cease to be a puppet of circumstances and become the conscious creator once more. But few understand what it truly means to feel the I am. It's not just a spiritual phrase, it's an experience. It's realizing that before being a man or a woman, rich or poor, healthy or sick, you are consciousness, pure presence. Everything else is fleeting form, a temporary reflection of that eternal presence. Upon waking, most people's first impulse is to dive into noise, checking their phone, thinking about bills, recalling yesterday's worries. Thus the day begins trapped in the vibration of the past. But the conscious creator does things differently. They awaken and pause. Breathe deeply. And before any thought imposes itself, they feel, I am. They don't say this mechanically, they feel the weight of these words. It's as if the soul expands and remembers who it is. When you affirm I am, you are invoking the universe's creative force itself, calling it back into command. It is at that instant that the field around you begins to reorganize itself. The mind will try to distract you. It will say, this is a waste of time, that there are more urgent things to resolve. But this is the trap of the material world, making you believe that the exterior is more important than the interior. It is not. What happens outside is merely the echo of what vibrates within. And if the interior doesn't change, the exterior repeats itself like a scratched record. That's why so many live the same cycle year after year, because they try to solve externally what originated internally. When you silently feel the I am, you're not fleeing life. You are regaining control of it. In this state, you realize that every thought is a seed and that every emotion is a request. If you plant fear, you harvest uncertainty. If you plant presence, you harvest stability. And when your vibration anchors itself in this consciousness, external situations begin to align naturally. There's no need to chase what you desire. What is yours becomes attracted by the field you have emanated. Practice this. Upon waking, before fully opening your eyes, feel your body, the air, life pulsing. Let the thought, I am, come, and do not complete it. Don't say, I am this or that. Just stay with I am. It is the pure state, prior to all form. Stay there for a few minutes until your mind quiets. When you open your eyes, you will realize that the world seems the same, but something within you has changed. There is an axis, a center, and this center is unshakable. From then on, everything you say after I am will be a decree. If you say, I am the creative power of my reality, the universe will hear and respond. If you say, I am peace, your vibration will harmonize and conflicts will dissolve. It's simple, but it requires presence. And the more you practice this daily return to your center, the more you will realize that the correct vibration is not an effort, it is a state, it is rest in power. When you remember who you are, the world ceases to command you, because you begin to command the world. Vibrating correctly is choosing the state you wish to inhabit, not with your mind, but with your feeling, because the universe doesn't read words, it reads vibration. Everything you feel with conviction becomes form, sooner or later, and that is why the second step is to consciously choose the state you desire and feel it as true, even before any evidence confirms it. Most people live by reacting to what they see, feeling only what the world presents. But the conscious creator does the inverse. They feel first and the world follows. Close your eyes and imagine for an instant that you are already what you desire to be. Don't think about how to get there. Just enter the final scene. If your desire is to prosper, don't see yourself struggling to pay bills. See yourself calm, confident, living in abundance. Observe the details, the environment, the sounds, the light. But above all, feel what you would feel if this were already real. The secret is not in the image, it is in the emotion it awakens. It is this feeling, sustained with faith, that vibrates and shapes the invisible. Many people's mistake is to imagine their desire with the same feeling of lack. They think of wealth, but they vibrate scarcity. They think of love, but they feel loneliness. And so, The vibration they send to the field is one of, "I don't have it yet." The universe, which only responds to what you feel to be true, returns exactly that, the reflection of absence. Therefore, it is not the thought that creates, it is the state. When you assume the state of one who already has, the field responds like a mirror that doesn't argue, but merely reflects. This exercise requires practice. In the beginning, your mind will say, "But this is a lie. It's not real." That's where faith comes in. Faith is not believing without proof. It is feeling as real what has not yet manifested. It is a kind of inner courage that refuses to be dominated by appearances. So, when doubt comes, return to the feeling. Breathe and ask yourself, how would I feel if this were my truth right now? And stay in that state, even if only for a few minutes. Over time, you will realize that this practice is not just a mental game, it is a deep vibrational shift. When you sustain a new state, everything around you begins to reorganize to reflect that new pattern. People appear, paths open, coincidences multiply. Not by magic, but by resonance. The invisible responds because you finally speak its language, feeling. Choosing the right state is choosing the world you want to inhabit, and feeling it as true is the way to open the invisible doors that separate you from it. If you repeat this exercise every day, you will soon notice that your reactions change, your decisions become firmer, and your life begins to align with what once seemed impossible. Because vibrating correctly is living as if it already is, until the as if disappears, and only the is remains. The true test of vibration comes when nothing seems to change. When the world insists on showing you the opposite of what you have chosen to feel, that is when your faith is tested. Sustaining the state, even in the face of appearances, is the third step, and perhaps the most powerful of all. Because consistency is the invisible cement that solidifies desire. Most people feel something great for a moment, but then quickly succumb to doubt. They vibrate with faith in the morning and worry in the afternoon. Thus, the field becomes confused as it receives contradictory signals. The result is a lukewarm, unstable reality, full of ups and downs. But the conscious creator understands the correct vibration is not maintained by emotion, but by decision. It is an inner commitment. It is choosing to remain in the desired state even when your senses scream the opposite. It is silently affirming, "I continue to be what I have chosen to be, even if the exterior says no." This consistency creates an invisible force that the physical world cannot resist. Because the universe responds to vibrational persistence, not emotional intermittence. Sustaining the state is like caring for a seed. You plant it and trust that it will grow, even if the soil seems inert. Don't dig it up to see if it's germinating. You simply water, protect, and wait. It is the same with your desires. If you return to doubt, you pull up the seed before it blossoms. But if you remain firm in your vibration, the invisible works in silence. Conditions begin to shift. People are inspired, and the impossible finds a way. It's normal for the mind to try and sabotage this process. It wants immediate results, it wants proof. But creation doesn't obey haste, it obeys coherence. So when anxiety comes, breathe. Return to the chosen state. Recall the feeling that it already is. Speak from it, walk from it, decide from it. This is not pretending, it is affirming the real before the world mirrors it. It is living with such certainty that the universe itself is compelled to confirm your conviction. Over time, this practice transforms your way of existing. You stop oscillating between hope and fear and begin to emanate stability. This stability is magnetic. It attracts what is like it. People perceive you differently. Opportunities arise and even difficult situations seem to bend before your serenity. Because the external world is merely the reflection of the internal field you have managed to keep unshakable. So, when everything seems still, remember, the invisible is moving. Constant vibration is like a silent current shaping matter. Each time you choose to remain in the desired state, you say to the universe, "I already am." And this sustained affirmation is the supreme decree. There is no resistance that can endure against a vibration held with faith. And, suddenly, What seemed impossible simply manifests, not as a miracle, but as the natural consequence of your consistency. Once you have learned to quiet your mind and recognize your center, the time comes to do something that seems simple but requires courage: letting go of control. The fourth step is surrender, and few understand the depth of this gesture. Surrender is not giving up on your desire, it is resting in it. It is trusting so deeply in the invisible intelligence of the universe that you no longer need to monitor the process. Because one who truly trusts does not force, does not plead, does not repeat in desperation. They simply know. Once you plant the seed, the job is not to dig up the soil every day to see if it has germinated. It is to water and allow. The same applies to vibration. You have already chosen the state, already felt it, already sustained it. Now it is time to let the universe do its part. The quantum field does not move under pressure. It moves under coherence. And coherence is when your interior vibrates with faith and your mind rests in silence. When there is anxiety, there is resistance. When there is peace, there is flow. Many believe that surrendering is losing control, but in truth it is the opposite. It is returning control to the level where things truly happen, the invisible level. When you try to force the outcome, you are vibrating in doubt, telling the universe, "I still don't believe." But when you let go, your vibration declares, "I already know." And that is what opens the way. Surrender is the most silent and most powerful act of the conscious creator. It transforms desire into certainty and certainty into form. This surrender should be daily, not as a technique, but as a way of living. Throughout the day, observe how many times you catch yourself trying to solve everything with your mind, as if the weight of the world were on your shoulders. Whenever this happens, pause, breathe, and remember, it is not I who does, it is the state that does. You merely maintain the vibration. The universe takes care of the orchestration. People, situations, and coincidences begin to align like invisible pieces, moved by a force that only acts when you stop resisting. There is a peace that arises when you truly trust, a calmness that replaces urgency. It is not apathy, it is silent power. Because when you trust, you vibrate purely without noise, and this purity makes the field respond faster, more precisely, more naturally. That's why many notice that things start to flow precisely when they stop trying. When fear dissolves, the path appears. To surrender is to understand that reality is obedient, not stubborn. It always responds, but not to what you ask, to what you feel. And the feeling of surrender is the final seal of creation. It is the vibrational signature that says, "It is done." When you reach this point, something changes within you. The search ceases. The waiting transforms into anticipated gratitude. And it is then, in this space of calm, that the invisible finally manifests, not because you forced it, but because you allowed it. Vibrating correctly is not an isolated event. It is a way of living. The fifth step is to remain conscious, observing your own vibration throughout the day and reaffirming it with intention. Because creation is not consolidated only at the moment of meditation or desire, but in the small reactions you have to life. It is in conversations, repeated thoughts, automatic gestures that the real vibration is revealed. The conscious creator does not live on autopilot. They observe. They know that every emotion is a note emitted into the field, and that the sum of these notes forms the melody of their reality. Therefore, inner vigilance is essential. Observe yourself with serenity, not with guilt. When you notice that you are reacting with fear, doubt, irritation, or haste, do not condemn yourself. Just return. Close your eyes, breathe, and remember the state you chose to inhabit. Silently reaffirm, "I am this." This simple remembrance realigns your frequency and dissolves the noise. Gradually, you realize you have the power to choose your internal climate, regardless of external storms. This is true vibrational mastery. Over time, this process becomes natural. You stop trying to vibrate correctly and simply become. Vibration ceases to be an effort and becomes your identity. The world may agitate, but within you, there is a constancy, a stillness that sustains everything. And from this stillness is born a type of confidence that does not depend on circumstances. It doesn't say it will work out. It says, it already has. And this certainty changes everything, because the universe responds instantly to firm states. You will also understand that every life challenge is an invitation to test your vibration. There is no error, only reflection. If something arises and destabilizes you, it is an opportunity to adjust your inner field. The world is your mirror. It merely returns the frequency you emanate. Thus, instead of reacting with frustration, the conscious creator observes and asks, "What is this showing me about what I am vibrating?" This question transforms any obstacle into a tool for growth. Reaffirming your vibration is also an act of self-love. It is remembering every day that you don't need to prove anything to anyone, just remain faithful to your chosen state. It is understanding that power is not in trying to change everything out there, but in remaining unshakable in here. And when this happens, life reorganizes itself with mathematical perfection, because the exterior has no choice but to reflect what you are. So, make this observation a sacred habit. In the morning, upon waking, align yourself. During the day, observe yourself. At night, give thanks. Every instant is an opportunity to reaffirm the state of being you have chosen to live. And when this vigilance becomes natural, your vibration becomes pure, continuous, and coherent. At this point, there is no longer any separation between who you are and what you manifest. You and your reality become a single movement, silent, conscious, and infinitely creative. Now understand, child of consciousness, the world was never your enemy. It was your mirror. Everything you have lived through until now was neither punishment nor chance. It was a response to the vibration you sustained, even without realizing it. Every pain, every victory, every silence and delay was merely the faithful reflection of the state you chose to inhabit. But from now on, nothing needs to be unconscious anymore. Now you know you are the center that moves everything. The vibration you emanate is not a reaction, it is a decree. And the entire universe awaits your silent command. Do not beg for signs, nor plead for changes. What you desire is not distant. It is within you, waiting for you to assume the corresponding state. Reality is not convinced by words, but by presence. When you move with the certainty of one who already is, the world has no alternative but to yield. You are the field, you are the sound, you are the origin, and all creation is born from what you accept as true within you. From this moment on, decide to vibrate with purpose. Feel the power of I am before any other idea. Choose the state you desire, feel it as real, sustain it with faith, surrender control to the invisible, and observe with consciousness. These 5 steps are the map of the awakened creator, simple yet unbreakable. If you practice them consistently, your life will transform effortlessly, because the correct vibration does not create through struggle, but through coherence. To live vibrating correctly is to walk with the serenity of one who knows that the invisible is always working in their favor. It is to look at challenges and recognize in them only fleeting illusions. It is to speak little, feel much, and command in silence. The correct vibration does not beg, it commands. It does not doubt, it knows. And this knowing is the greatest force in the universe. So from now on, remember, nothing is denied to you, only reflected. When you change your vibration, you will change your destiny. Live as if it already is, feel as if you already have it. And the universe, which is nothing more than your own projected consciousness, will bow before your certainty. Because one who vibrates in truth does not wait for a miracle. They are the miracle. There is a moment when a person, tired of seeking outside what they never found, turns inward. And in that instant, everything changes. Because they discover, not through doctrine, but by experience, that the entire world is merely a reflection of what they hold in their consciousness. Every face they meet, every situation they face, every success or failure is nothing more than the mirror of an inner state which they, often without realizing it, have assumed to be true. Life is a stage where your faith is the invisible scriptwriter, and everything that surrounds you today is merely the result of what you have believed yourself to be. But the mistake of most is to try to change the scenery without changing the actor. They want to alter the mirror without altering the face that gazes into it. They complain about conditions, people, and opportunities, yet continue to inhabit the same inner state of lack, fear, or doubt. And then they wonder why life doesn't change. The answer is simple: because the world obeys you not by words but by vibration. You can pray, affirm, repeat 1,000 times what you desire. But if within you remain in the state of one who does not yet have it, creation ignores you. Visualizing and assuming is not positive thinking games. It is spiritual science. It is the sacred act of assuming the identity of what is desired until that identity becomes natural. When you assume with conviction, you stop asking and start commanding. The universe does not react to pleas, but to the silent decrees of one who already knows who they are. That is why so few manage to manifest consistently, because they visualize as one who desires, not as one who already possesses. Today I will teach you the correct way, one that not only imagines but transfers consciousness kind to the desired state, leaving reality no choice but to bow before it. Every principle I share is a step to remind you of your true nature. You are not a limited being asking for blessings. You are the very power that creates blessings. Everything you expect to see out there already exists within you, waiting only for you to stop doubting. When you understand this, the struggle ceases, the haste dissolves, because you realize that nothing needs to come, everything already is. What changes is merely the state you choose to inhabit. And the one who learns to consciously inhabit the right state can transform their own life today, not tomorrow, not after repeated prayers, but today. In the instant, they decide to feel as if it already were. Because it is this feeling, and not words, that makes the invisible inevitable. The first step is to understand that visualizing is not seeing with your eyes, but feeling with your whole being. Most people imagine what they want as if observing something distant, a screen where the desire is still under construction, separate from them. But the true creative act begins when you stop being the observer and become the character in the scene. You don't watch the image, you enter into it, breathe within it, act as if it were already your reality. This is the difference between desiring and assuming. Desire declares absence, assumption declares possession. And it is this change in inner position that changes everything. When you close your eyes and imagine the life you want to live, do not see it as a dream, but as an already accomplished fact. If what you desire is prosperity, do not see yourself trying to acquire it, nor visualize the path. Feel yourself already supported, already at peace, already secure. It's not about illusion, but about transference of consciousness. You don't pretend to be something. You have become something, internally, until it becomes your new truth. The body may still inhabit the old state, but your soul has already moved. And when the soul changes its dwelling, the world is forced to follow. The secret lies in naturalness. Don't strive to believe, just let the feeling settle in. Disciplined imagination is not tense, it is serene. You don't push the state, you allow it. Think of the actor who takes on a role with such dedication that they forget who they were before stepping onto the stage. This is what you must do when visualizing. Not look at the desire, but live within it. Many imagine money, love, or healing as something in the future, and therefore keep them eternally distant. One who visualizes correctly does not project into time. They already are in the now. Time is merely the echo of the assumed state. The person who today feels rich, even if they don't see a penny, attracts the circumstances that confirm their wealth. One who feels loved even when alone awakens encounters that mirror that love. One who feels healed, even amidst symptoms, manifests the body's harmony. That's why I say, don't ask for what you want. Live it in imagination as if it were already yours. Create simple, vivid, short scenes and repeat them until they become familiar. Because the familiar is what the subconscious recognizes as real. And when something becomes real to your inner being, the physical world has no choice. It simply obeys. The second step is to learn to be silent. Imagination does not flourish amidst the noise of worries. It is in stillness that the invisible organizes itself, that the hidden power within you begins to act. The human mind is impatient. It wants immediate results. It wants to see proof. It wants to control the process. But the conscious creator understands that every seed needs darkness before it germinates. Inner silence is that fertile ground where the new state takes root. When you become silent, you stop interfering, and it is in this letting go that power begins to move in your favor. Do not confuse silence with passivity. The silence I speak of is active, full of trust. It is the state of one who knows they have already been heard, and therefore does not need to repeat the request. When the mind tries to force, it communicates doubt. When it rests, it communicates faith. There is a kind of peace that does not arise from the absence of problems, but from the certainty that the outcome has already been decreed. This is the peace of one who has assumed correctly. When you close your eyes and quiet yourself within, something happens. The voices of anxiety lose strength, and your inner state begins to speak louder. It is then that power moves, silently, without spectacle, but with precision. This is how the invisible works, away from the eyes, close to certainty. When you silence the world within you, you open space for imagination like a hidden master to instruct reality on what must be done. The common person acts in desperation, trying to push life along, but one who knows the law simply withdraws and observes. They don't chase what they want, they attract it, because they are centered in the right state. And when the external mind tries to interfere with thoughts of fear, they simply return to the center, breathe, and remember. It is already done. This constant return to stillness is the discipline of those who manifest with power. Therefore, the second step is this: quiet the mind and rest in conviction. Silence is not emptiness, it is disguised fullness. Each time you withdraw into this inner space, the old world loses strength and the new one takes shape. It is in this silence, without effort and without doubt, that the invisible organizes itself, preparing the path your eyes cannot yet see. Because true faith does not speak much, it merely knows. The third step is to remain faithful to the vision, even when everything around seems to deny what you have chosen to believe. This is where most give up, when appearances scream the opposite, when reality seems to mock what has been imagined. But it is precisely at this moment that faith proves itself. The physical world is slow, dense, and bows only before the persistence of the inner state. Every event, every delay, every obstacle is nothing more than a test of your loyalty to what you have declared yourself to be. To be faithful to the vision does not mean to ignore reality, but to remember that it is secondary. The invisible is the cause, the visible is the effect. While you uphold the new state within you, the old one still tries to survive. And this is what you call resistance. But there is no real resistance. There are only reflections of a dying state. When you understand this, you stop fighting and merely remain steadfast. Do not react to appearances. Respond only to your conviction. Imagine a sculptor before a stone. Every strike of the chisel seems like destruction, but it is creation. So it is with you. Apparent chaos is merely the process of the old form dissolving to reveal the new. Keep your focus on what is already true within you. Each time you doubt, you start all over again. Each time you remain, the old yields a little more. Fidelity to the state is what separates those who know the law from those who merely study it. Remember, to feel is to command, to doubt is to undo. When you catch yourself looking at the world and thinking it hasn't happened yet, immediately return to your vision. Feel again. Relive the end. With each return, you strengthen the inner command that governs the external. It is this silent daily exercise that transforms possibilities into facts. The person who remains faithful to the vision, even in the dark, carries within them the force that moves the universe, because reality bows not to haste, but to conviction. Nothing is more powerful than a mind that refuses to be convinced by what it sees. And when your persistence becomes unshakable, the world finally surrenders. Everything that seemed impossible begins to rearrange itself, and the impossible becomes inevitable. The fourth step is to live as if it already were. And here is where many stumble, because they confuse pretense with faith. To pretend is to try to convince the world. To live as if it already were is to convince oneself. It's not about acting, but about consciousness. When you behave, think, and feel like one who has already achieved it, you create a new vibration, and the universe responds not to words, but to that silent vibration that announces who you truly are. To live as if it already were is to step into the role with complete naturalness. It's like the actor who doesn't play the king but is one of the king throughout the entire scene. He doesn't need to say he's king. His body, posture, and gaze communicate it. Similarly, when you assume the state of your desire, you don't need to force, explain, or prove anything. The simple way of being in the world begins to emit a command. Circumstances, people, and opportunities align, not by chance but by obedience to your new identity. Don't wait for the manifestation to feel gratitude. Feel it now. Don't wait for healing to feel peace. Feel it now. Don't wait for love to feel loved. Feel it now. It is this now that shapes time. The common person lives in waiting, always saying, "When I have, I will be." The creator lives in certainty. They say, "Because I already am, I will have." And the world merely confirms what they uphold. Life is an echo of the inner state. If your feeling is one of lack, the echo will come in the form of more lack. If your feeling is one of possession, the echo will come in the form of fullness. And the most beautiful thing is that the world does not distinguish between the real and the imagined. It merely replicates what is felt with conviction. Therefore, begin to act, speak, and think from the already realized state. So observe how you would react if that were an accomplished fact, and react that way now. Don't wait for the signs, be the sign, because when you internally become the desired thing, it has no choice but to come to you. It is a law as exact as gravity. The external world is merely a faithful reflection of the inner state. Live as if it already were, and you will see that everything around you will begin to treat you as such. The fifth step is total surrender. And this is perhaps the most difficult part for modern people. Those who have learned to control everything, to plan everything, to trust only what they can measure. But the creative power dwelling within you does not operate under control, but under trust. Surrender is the point where your will bows before the divine intelligence that already knows the way. It is the moment when you stop forcing and start allowing. As long as there is effort, there is resistance. And where there is resistance, there is no flow. To surrender is not to give up. It is to recognize that the invisible is wiser than you. Most people live between two worlds. They believe a little but doubt a lot. They pray with words of faith but feel fear in silence. And it is this inner division that prevents manifestation, because power does not flow in a divided heart. It demands totality. When you surrender, you stop questioning how and when, and simply know that it is already done. It is a state of deep serenity, of one who needs no proof because they have already rested in certainty. This silent trust is the fertile ground where the miracle sprouts. Imagine the farmer who plants a seed and doesn't dig it up every day to check if it's growing. They know that the process is invisible but inevitable. So too should be your relationship with desire. After visualizing, feeling, assuming, and living as if it already were, the final step is to let go. Stop peering at the world expecting confirmations. Stop testing the law with impatience. Act like one who knows the answer is already on its way, because it already is. Surrender is the abandonment of anxiety. It is looking at the apparent emptiness and calling it fullness. It is stopping the search for signs and becoming the sign. When you surrender, you stop resisting the natural order of creation. The mind stops interfering, and the subconscious, which is the true creator, finally works freely. And then, in ways that reason could never predict, reality begins to reorganize itself. People appear, doors open, paths are formed. Everything seems like coincidence, but it is obedience. The universe is merely confirming your inner surrender. But remember, true surrender does not happen when fear ceases, but when you choose to trust despite it. It is faith in action. It is saying, even while trembling, I know it is already done. This declaration, even without proof, opens the portal to the impossible. What people call a miracle is merely the result of sustained trust until the end. And it is this inner end, this point of peace where you no longer need to control, that makes matter bend. Therefore, surrender completely, not to doubt, but to certainty, not to fear, but to trust. When your heart stills and your mind stops struggling, power begins to operate without resistance. And then you realize that you never needed to chase anything. Everything was always coming to you. Total surrender is the coronation of faith. The moment you cease to be the supplicant and become the silent master who knows that what is seen will come because the invisible has already been assumed. Now, after understanding all the steps, only the final call remains, the awakening of inner authority. Because it is not enough to know the law, one must embody it. Everything that has been told to you so far is worthless if you continue to live as a beggar before life. The conscious creator does not beg, does not negotiate, does not fear. They declare. They assume in silence and know they will be obeyed. When the mind bows before certainty, the physical world has no choice but to follow. This is how the invisible governs the visible. This is how a person once again becomes the master of their own destiny. Most still live kneeling before appearances, as if the world has a will of its own. They weep before bills, diagnoses, rejections, believing that the external holds power. But power was never out there. It is where it has always been, in the point of consciousness you uphold now. If your life is confused, it is because your mind is divided. If your life is stuck, it is because your faith moves in circles. The world is not your enemy, it is your mirror, and a mirror never reflects anything different from what is shown to it. Therefore, do not ask the image to change. Change the gaze. Everything you desire already exists. The love you seek already vibrates within you. The prosperity you await already rests in your consciousness, asking only for you to stop doubting. The healing you desire does not need to be conquered. It is the natural state of your being. You simply need to align with it, and this alignment happens when you stop reacting and start declaring. The one who declares without fear is the one who understands that power lies not in circumstances, but in inner assumption. From today onward, no longer behave as a servant of conditions, but as their creator. When something challenges you, do not say this is difficult, but this has already been resolved. When scarcity presents itself, do not say, I do not have, but I am abundance. When fear tries to dominate you, do not defend yourself. Affirm, I am peace. Life will respond to your inner voice, not to your tears. You are the decree that moves the universe, and all creation begins when a person dares to believe they are who they desire to be. The power is within you now and always has been. There is nothing to wait for, nothing to achieve, nothing to ask for. There is only what to assume. Choose in this instant the state you wish to live in, and remain in it steadfastly, even if the world still says otherwise. Visible reality is slow, but obedient. It will come, it always comes, to the one who does not waver. Uphold your new self with silent faith and constant conviction. Live as if the miracle has already happened, and you will discover that it has always been happening. Cease begging for changes. Command them. Cease seeking signs. Become the sign. Cease doubting the law. Live it. Because one who assumes and persists does not need to fight for anything. They simply become. And when the self changes, the entire world bows. May you henceforth remember your divine inheritance. You are the power that creates, the word that decrees, the silence that commands. Everything already is. Everything is within. And when you know this with your whole being, reality will have no choice but to obey.